Wave High, Liam, and Griffin Sands, and they're going to be doing what's called a straight song. So we hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Sego swagweg, lodant ni ong yats, wagegwaho ni wagita loda, wagnyota aga ni wagohunjot, negid wigay ka, ne wahni slade, ne wagatsanuni, ne wagagwe ni, ne wagedo de ne ganto ne kay ka na wahni slat, ne agagwe ni, ne kaliwayendakundun, ne na agadlanoda, ne jinigalanoda. Ne hunja gekan ne gununya so ne agagwe ni ne dagliwate ne nategan dunyo he ne jini kanunyoda ne jini dwawunyoda ne wigai ka ne yunganyota ag ne yunganoshon ne giskid wigai ka ne hona ne dektenya se ne jini gawanoda se ne hosluni ge ne agagwe ni ne nahagwe gun ne waswatni gulayandas. Dane Tonyo Tahage Nayungwatnigo. So hello everyone. Greetings to all. My name is Lodant Hanyest. I come from Oneida Town, what we call Oneida Town or Oneida Nation of the Thames. I'm from the Oneida Nation, which is a part of the Six Nations Confederacy, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. I've been asked to come today to talk a little bit about some of our songs and dances that we do in our community, within our confederacy as well. Our homelands were originally in what is now known as New York State, but we also had a lot of our people living in southwestern Ontario as well, Iroquois people that were living here in this part of the land. A lot of the archaeological digs, that's what they find, is they find longhouses. They find, the Iroquois style of pottery, pipes, a lot of the things of what they find when they do the digs. It's all Iroquois in this area. So our ancestors were here. They referred to them, I guess, as the neutrals. Some of them referred to them as the tobacco people as well. Part of their job was just to be strictly agricultural, and that's what they took care of for our people. And so they say that our territory, it stretched as far to the northeast as Toronto and all the way down south to Windsor. Those were some of our lands, I guess, that our ancestors where they were living, prior to contact. This song here is an old style war dance that we use for our smoke dance contests. It is not an actual Wasaze war dance song, but it is actually derived from our social dance songs. And the song that I'm going to be using today for this demonstration is from our Shake the Bush social dance set. And so here we go, song number 1, the old style war dance. Okay, that first song, that was an old style, war dance style, smoke dance song. And so this next song that we're going to do today is what we would use for both the men's and the women's smoke dance contest. Generally, the women's would be a little bit slower tempo, just because their style of dance is a little bit more graceful than the men's. The men's is a little bit more rigorous and the tempo is a little bit faster with these songs that we use. So again, we're going to be using a social dance song for this. And this particular song that I'm going to use was shared with me from one of my singing brothers from Allegheny. His name is Alan Dowdy, and he composed this song. And so this is the song that I'm going to be singing for our second smoke dance song here this afternoon. So here we go, song number 2. That's a little bit. That's just a little tidbit or a little snapshot, I guess, of our Oneida songs and dances that we are able to share with you today. And so again, I just like to thank the organizers for inviting me to come out and to participate and to share these songs with everybody here today. Yawanko Donate.
For our next presentation, we're going to ask our Jingle dress dancers to come on out and give us an exhibition song. Now, this is a very special and sacred dance to Indigenous people all over North America, but it did originate in the Lake of the Woods area of Northern Ontario and Minnesota by the great Ojibwe Nation. Originally considered to be a healing dance, a healing ceremony. It moved all across North America and is being used today at many powwows, many gatherings as a healing ceremony. So whenever there is a person or a family that is in need of that good spiritual healing, they bring out our jingle dress dancers in combination with the use of our medicines and the drum to offer up those good thoughts and prayers. But for your listening and viewing pleasure, we're going to bring our dancers out here this afternoon. We'll make some introductions at this time. Everybody, this is Ivy. Say hi, Ivy. And this is Ashley. Say hi, Ashley. Ashley's local from here in Chippewa, the Thames First Nation.
Tanse Gakio, Gordon Nicotine-Sands, Nasiga Sun, Poundmaker Nihiano Otsinia, Awohana Scots, Kipin Gamuak, Tapwe Nanaskamon, Kape Sito Skatukuk. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gordon Nicotine-Sands, and I just said in Plains Cree or Nehioak that I am from originally the Poundmaker Cree First Nation in Saskatchewan, also out of Bkejwanong territory, also known as Walpole Island, just off of the shores of the St. Clair. And it is certainly my pleasure to be with you here tonight. Thank you very much for joining us here, Sunfest's Circle Dance event. And with joining me tonight, we have a wonderful panel of very talented and educated and all around amazing and lovely people. And I'm going to introduce them at this time. Or actually, I'll let them introduce themselves before we get started. So we'll call upon Jenna Rose.
You can introduce me if you want. My name is Jenna Rose Sands. Hello, I'm Cree Anishinaabe from Bkejwanong territory. Basically, you could say almost the exact same intro for me as my brother, Gordon, right here. So happy to be here. I'm an artist, writer, activist, general rebel rouser in the city of London. So thanks for having me here.
Awesome, thank you. Leslie Henry White-Eye.
Hi everyone. Thanks for the invitation. My name's Leslie White-Eye. I'm from the Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, just down the road here, just down the river from London. I'm a mom. I got 3 kids, and I'm Wolf Clan, and I am an educator, and also I work in governance with a lot of First Nations, and was the former chief at Chippewas of the Thames First Nation. Miigwech.
Excellent, awesome. Lodan, I think you got to unmute your microphone. Yeah. All right, there you go, buddy.
Sego swagwake, Lodan ni on yats, Bkejwanong ni wagita loda, Bkejwanong aga ni wagopanjot, Negit wiga eka, ne wasunda de, ne wagatsanuni, ne wagagweni nega, ne Kong Ige se nega eka, ne wasunda de, ne naga gweni, ne watale ne wiga eka, ne Chini Yoda ne wiga eka, ne ungo neha, ne oni ne yingala naya ne wiga eka, Negiskit wiga eka ne honane ne Bkejwanong se ne Jingle se ne no zunigene, ne yagagweni ne hagwekun ne was wat gulayandas. So hello everyone, my name is Lodan Hanyas. I come from Oneida town, otherwise known as Oneida Nation of the Thames. Glad to be here tonight to be a part of this panel and to share a little bit of information about our songs and dances.
All right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, certainly last but not least, we are certainly blessed and fortunate to have with us here tonight a Juno Award winner, originally from the Bkejwanong First Nation in Northern Ontario. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Crystal Shawanda. Crystal, do you want to give us a few words?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be joining you all this evening. I am Crystal Shawanda. I'm Ojibwe Odawa Potawatomi from the Bkejwanong First Nations. I am a recording artist with True North Records, and I am the CEO of New Sun Music. I am a producer, songwriter, mother, motivational speaker, and yeah, and I'm just happy to be here in the hopes of sharing my experiences and the hopes that it'll help somebody out there go through their journey just a little more easily. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, there wasn't one specific topic or genre we were going to talk about. As you know, the Indigenous population in this country faces a variety of issues. We don't want to focus on just the hardships and those kind of issues, but also celebrate who we are, academically or through the arts and music, and especially the culture is important. So I think what we'll start off with is how we came to be here this evening. The founder of Sunfest is a very an awesome man, Alfredo Kashaw, and he founded Sunfest. That's been happening. It's a multicultural music festival that's been happening in the downtown London for well over 2 decades, and it's just getting bigger and better. And although I know, I'm not the first Indigenous person that's come in contact with Alfredo, from the area. I know this is probably the most consecutive years that, we've been involved, and he's involved us in the 3-day festival somehow. So because of the pandemic, he had to change it up and present you with this virtual gathering. But Alfredo himself, being an Indigenous man himself from South America, is fully aware of the plights and the ups and downs and the perils of the Indigenous population here in Canada. So he felt it very necessary to acknowledge this land that we dwell upon, this area in particular that he's had so much success with Sunfest, bringing in the world essentially to London and the surrounding area, bringing the world to this part of Ontario that he felt, this is sort of his way of giving back, and, not necessarily introducing the Indigenous population, because like my sister pointed out a few minutes ago that we're just 5 people here. We don't speak for everybody, but us sharing our personal stories is the way that we try to, speak for, what it's like to be an Indigenous person in this area. So I think we'll start off with Leslie, who is a lifelong member of the Chippewa of the Thames First Nation just outside of London, and maybe just give us a brief history and sort of overall, if you can speak to that, what it's like to be, just from just outside of the area here. Here, micro, you gotta unmute. Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Thanks, Gord. Yeah, just really happy to be invited by Sunfest to do this. I mean, I just want to extend a big thank you to Alfredo, because he always thinks of us. It's amazing to have that kind of support and know that you're being thought of, being close neighbors of London. And yeah, so our community, Chippewa of the Thames, we call it Deshkon Zibi. That's the original name of the river that our people know it as. It stands for Antler River, or if it's translated into English, it means Horn River. There's 2 stories behind that naming. One is straight just naming the way the river looks. It branches out at London and looks like an antler. The other is it's more of comes from our creation stories and the Nanabush stories. We, in Anishinaabe culture, these beings have a credible presence in our culture and in the ways in which they teach us about life, and also about how to care for one another, and also how to be protective of the things that matter most to our culture, like the land, like the water. And so there's talk and pieces of the story today that connect this name to the great horned serpent. And part of that learning I'm undertaking, because I think it's important. There's something to be learned by this great being, certainly because he's a protector of the water and the role that he plays in terms of our waterways and where he travels, all through Anishinaabe creation stories and our stories of Nanabush. He's seen all over the place, including Manitoulin Island, including Crystal's area there, in Bkejwanong, and up along all through the Great Lakes, and also underground. So there's that component of our story here at Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, and probably should become a historical part of the story of the London story, because you sit alongside the same waterway. The last thing I want to say for now is our people, we have a story, a history that talks about a great migration here as Anishinaabeg people. We have a history as well about moving and moving from the eastern coast over to this area. And that movement was, not only a people moving slowly westward, but it was a spiritual movement. And in it, there was, there's this belief and way of thinking about the world that was carried forward and brought westward with us through our movement. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot there, and just excited to share some of that with you all today. Miigwech.
Excellent, great. Yeah, that's a good point. That the migration that you're talking about swings all the way across all the way around the Great Lakes, and you can just see like the historical movement of the Anishinaabe. So it's really interesting. Like we could talk forever about it. I think we'll go on over to Lodun, who represents the Oneida Nation of the Thames, which is right next door to Chippewa of the Thames, and as well Muncie. CMO, that's the area that they call it. And Lodun, we're going to ask you to speak of the history and, of course, the migration of your own people to the area and the significance and the roles. And just, I know you're a wonderful historian, so the floor is yours.
Yawanko. I guess kind of what happened with our people, our migration happened after the Revolutionary War in the late 1700s. And, without getting into too much of the history, the Oneidas, that we kind of had a factionalism that happened that, within our nation. And we had, two groups of people. One that they referred to as the Pagan Party. The Pagan Party was, one way of saying the traditional Chiefs Party, the ones that were following the traditional leadership of our nation. And then they had the what they called the Christian Party. And so after the Revolutionary War, the head of the Christian Party, his name was Skenado, and he was actually a chief. He was actually a condoled chief, even though he was not a part of the Pagan Party. And after he passed on, there was a power struggle, I guess, between two members of the Christian Party who were looking to take over that leadership role for that group within our nation. And it actually split off into two separate groups. So then we had the first Christian Party and the second Christian Party. And what happened after the Revolutionary War was that because the two factions that we had, it was actually the Christian Party, which was also known as the Warriors Party back then, that they had sided with the colonists, who would then become the Americans. And, we all know the history of that war, that the Americans or the colonists, eventually, won that war, the Revolutionary War. And so, the defeat of the British and the Ungwahome people that were allied with the British under Joseph Brant, a lot of our people at that time were moved, to Upper Canada. And a lot of our people settled along the Grand River, in what is now known as the Six Nations. And there were some Oneidas as well that had gone there, that had, chosen to take that side in the Revolutionary War. And so what happened after that was that the Oneidas, that we were still living in our homelands, and we had this, big, 10 million acre chunk of land, right in the middle of what is now known as New York State. And they were wanting to build the Erie Canal. And the governor at the time, his name was Governor Clinton, and he wanted to build the Erie Canal. But us Oneidas, we were sitting right smack in the middle of all of that. And so they had to try and figure out a way of, how can we get rid of these Oneidas so that we can build the Erie Canal? And that's eventually what ends up happening, is that our land was stolen through illegal land transactions. They were just getting, random people, not dealing with the leadership to come on and, to sign these land documents, these land transfer documents. And eventually they sent the army in, to kind of remove our people. And it wasn't done in a good way. It wasn't done in a way where we were given a choice, whether we could stay or not stay in our homelands. And so we were, basically handed a bag of money and said, here, go and find someplace else to live. And that was supposed to be our compensation. And so we knew that there were Delawares that were living in this area. Some of the Lenape people, they had a relationship with our people, with the Oneidas. And we actually had a group of Lenape people living in parts of our hunting territories, our southern hunting territories in Pennsylvania. And we actually had a group of Stockbridge Munsees living right within our territories in New York State. And so we were familiar that the Munsees, the Lenape people, the Delaware people, were also being removed from their homelands and pushed west. And so we knew that there was a group at Moraviantown, but we also knew that there was a group that was living at the Thames River as well. And so that's what we started to do, is that we started to send scouts out to that area to see what the land was like over here, if it was going to be suitable for us to live over here. And we talked to the people over here. We talked to the Lenape people. We talked to the Anishinaabe people that were here, the Chippewas of the Thames that had also migrated to this area a little bit before we did. but they all kind of told us, yeah, this is a good place. This is a good place to live. And so that's what we done with that money that, our compensation that was, kind of thrown on the floor in front of us. We picked that up and we purchased this land. And, we actually got the Crown to remove their title from our land. So our community is not Crown land. It's not a reserve. It's a settlement. So we're kind of unique in that way, that we're not a quote unquote, reserve. So, things like jurisdiction, all that kind of stuff, we were kind of, taking care of ourselves in that way. And it was our hereditary chiefs. They were the ones that kind of, took care of that for us. So they were the ones that were the signees to that deed, and all of our community was just held in common, with the chiefs. And so that's a little bit of the history about how we come to live in this area, and how we come to join our neighbors in the CMO area.
That's what the two of you just said was very crucial to, anybody in the London area who's watching, and, you guys are delivering that rich sort of history that we don't necessarily learn this in our school systems, in our local school systems. I mean, this information is valuable, and it's, I wish that, more people like you were brought on just from educational standpoint. I mean, I see a lot of that through the cultural work that I do, but it's just singing and dancing. But, you got to make kids sit through this and listen to this, like the generations that are coming up. That's where we sort of enact change. The real change is to have that education. So we're going to take it on over to Jenna Rose, who Jenna Rose and our mother is from Walpole Island, which is an unceded territory, which means they were always there. And we'll get Jenna Rose to not only speak about her experience as an urban Indigenous woman, but also, Jenna Rose, we can speak to what you're currently working on with your zines and the message that you're trying to convey and the issues that you are confronting.
Thanks, bro. Just want to also say thank you to Alfredo for having this. We talk a lot about, what makes excellent allies. And one thing that is really important, and I see in London doing a lot of art and activism work and I don't know, consulting, hopefully more collaboration, less consulting, more collaborating, is that we often don't get to collaborate. We're often sort of given spaces and sort of told this is what we want to have done. And it's like, oh, we want Indigenous folks to come here and this is what we have for you. So we don't often get to come, have organizations come to us and actually say what is important for you to show and what is important for you to say. So I really think that's excellent that, they reached out to you, Gord, and said like, what do you need to say and what do you have to have done? Because that's really bringing us to the table of helping curate our own events and the things that are important to us.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think a lot of organizations could really take a lead on that and be collaborative and less like, oh, here, we're giving you this amount of whatever. My focus in London has been a lot of education around sort of past events in Indigenous history. I like to equate it to being Indigenous, especially an urban Indigenous woman, is when you start to talk to somebody about Indigenous issues, it's like as if you had a new doctor every time you went to see them. So if you had this, chronic issue, and every time you went to a new doctor, in order to actually get to the meat of how to solve an issue, you have to explain your entire history. And for me, I'm just tired of explaining that history. And I think that we live in a world where we're all walking around with computers in our pocket and stuff, and people can start to take on that education on their own and not sort of burden minority populations with it. So I have created zines. They're called Atrocities Against Indigenous Canadians for Dummies. And each issue deals with sort of, survivor experiences, historical facts, and sort of questions like, why aren't folks, one, taught this, and two, why are we always expected to sort of like drag out our difficult history before we can actually be heard? And, we're having this discussion before this started about everyone's very focused about truth and reconciliation. And for me, we're not even at the reconciliation part. I personally don't know what that looks like, because I don't think we've ever had really amazing connections with the crown and the government. I don't know what we're coming back to, but we're still in that truth part. You know, we're still having to educate people and tell people that, you know, our history isn't history. We are living history. We're often spoken about in a past tense, and we are very much here and thriving. And we are not just our traumas, which I think is really important. We are constantly evolving. We come from so many different nations. We have so many different connections. Like, Leslie, you were one of the first people that taught me how to dance. And Loden, I've known you forever through, you know, my brother and my mother, and we're all connected. And, you know, some of our intros, it's like, oh, I guess I just say I'm Cree and Ojibwe, but we're also Lenape, but we're also Potawatomi. Like, we're so, we have such a rich way of living. But as an urban Indigenous woman, that's really often, I'm sure you know this as well, Gord, and it's hard. You know, we have this like very rich, often, you know, traumatic history that we're trying to you know, resolve and come together in ourselves. Like, we're trying to have a reconciliation within our own self. And but then you're in the city where everything is busy and bustling. And, you know, when I hit my late teens and early 20s, I couldn't focus on being Indigenous for me, because I just couldn't deal with the fact that these things that I wanted in life, you know, art stuff, you know, a career in the stuff that the things, the very essence who I am, an Indigenous woman, could potentially be the thing that denies me opportunities within my community. And that's a really hard thing. Like, it's like, oh, if you want to progress, then you have to be less Indian and more city. And it's very hard, I think, for urban artists of any minority to live the land of colonization, like institutions with systemic racism and violence, but then also bring in that part of our history. So for me, it's been a really interesting journey doing work of one, having a boundary of being like, I'm not going to take on your guilt or your lack of education. But also for me being like, you know, being feminine, being Indigenous is exactly who I am. You know, I'm not any less feminine because I'm loud or this or that. And so it has been really, really interesting. And there are struggles just trying to walk that line of like, one foot's in past and wanting to preserve and live your old ways and the old ways of your family and that safety and that warmness. But then there's this other way that just moves at like lightning speed. So yeah, I'm very interested to hear how other creative people navigate that, because that's something that I definitely have not done gracefully all the time.
Okay. Yeah. I you know, you encapsulated that beautifully. It was very, very well said. It's, and this goes on for most of your life, and before you know it, you're in your 40s and you're like, wow, you know. So which brings us to Crystal, just if you can share with us. Crystal, you weren't always a well-known singer and celebrity of sorts. So if you can tell us what it was like to be an Indigenous person, you know, trying to make it in this business, and also, you know, relocating, because I know you've been in, is it Nashville? For a number of years. So if you can just share with us just a little bit of your journey. I think you're muted.
That happens like every single time. Yeah. So, yeah, I've been in Nashville for about 18 years now. You know, I consider it home. When I'm away from it, I'm homesick for it. Even though I spent, you know, many, many years, and I'm still homesick for my home community. I don't think that ever goes away, you know, that connection we have to our, not just our family, but the community itself and the land, you know, to where everybody, wherever you grew up, you know, we all, that connection never really goes away. And we always, I don't know, I always say, I always feel like I'm just waiting to go home. Like, even though I've been in Nashville for 18 years, I still feel that way. And sometimes it's hard to explain, but you guys probably know what that feels like, you know. And so for me, you know, I was always facing a lot of different, you know, I grew up in Nicotine-Sands, and so I started singing as soon as I could make noise and finding any stage that I could get on. And so my parents started taking me to bars and grills and taverns and places where they had open mics and karaoke and live bands playing. And you know, and my dad always taught me to speak up for myself, you know, because he said, I'm not always going to be there, and you're not always going to have somebody there to speak for you. So, you know, go up to the band and ask, can I get up to sing? Learning how to be outspoken. You know, sometimes as Indigenous people, sometimes we can be a little bit introverted, especially if we are the only one in the room. If we're the only Indigenous person in the room, sometimes that can affect our self-esteem and our confidence. And there's always that, you know, that feeling of wanting to go back to what's comfortable to us. And that's, you know, our hometowns. And that's why a lot of us, sometimes when we leave our reserves or our communities to go out and to go live in the city or something, you know, sometimes we end up going back. We don't stay as long, or we don't finish what we started, whether it's going to school or starting a new job, because we, you know, experience a lot of culture shock. And that's something that I experienced when I first moved to Nashville when I was 16. You know, there was nobody in Nashville who was anything like me. I was the first, you know, brown person on Broadway, brown person, period, you know, on Broadway, downtown Nashville, trying to get up to sing at these honky tonks. And so, you know, sometimes our sense of humor, sometimes people didn't get my sense of humor, and I tend to make a joke out of everything, and I laugh at anything and everything. And people know this about me when they become friends with me, even when I was in high school, you know, because I left my reserve when I was 13 years old to go to a music school. And so you know, I got really used to always being the only Indigenous one in the bunch, in the classroom, in the group of friends, you know. And so that was something that I experienced. And so people would like, sometimes I would be like, somebody would be like, oh, well, Crystal's laughing, it must be funny what I said. And then people would be like, well, she laughs at anything, that doesn't count. And you know, and sometimes I just felt out of place, you know, like speaks to like, and there wasn't anybody like me in the, you know, bunches that I was trying to roll in, you know, trying to break through. And I think right away we met a lot of resistance growing up. You know, my parents would try to take me to, you know, beyond Manitoulin Island. They would try to take me to places to sing all over Ontario. And sometimes we would experience racism and discrimination. And, you know, I got to experience it very early on. You know, like I said, I jumped on stage at 6. I started getting paid to sing when I was 10. And so I experienced it a lot. And sometimes even bands, like live bands. And I was just a kid, and I'm asking, hey, can I get up to sing? And, you know, they say something racist or, you know, something stereotypical. And, you know, and I'm just a kid. I'm like 10, 11 years old, and I don't even really know how to react or respond to that. But thankfully, I had really awesome parents who were so strong and who had been out in the world, and they traveled a lot, and they used to go out and work in different places in Michigan. And so they taught me a lot. You know, they prepared me for that, and tried to mentally prepare me for that, and to tell me that, you know, when we experience this, we have to just shake it off, and we can't focus on it, because if we focus on it, that's going to be consuming all this time you could be spending on your career or your dreams or whatever it is you're pursuing. If you're putting all your energy into all this negativity, then that's that much time that you're not spending on your goals. And I guess my parents always tried to teach that to me, is that sometimes racism can be used as a distraction. And you know, it consumes us. It takes up our time, not just our heart, but our mind, and just our time, whatever we choose to spend on daily. And so I tried to, you know, they always tried to teach me to represent my people and to speak up for and raise awareness, but at the same time to not forget about my goals and my dreams. And so the more I moved out into the world, the more I experienced this. And to be honest, the whole reason I moved to Nashville when I was 16 is because I couldn't get taken seriously in Ontario as a mainstream country music artist. Every time I would try to pursue something, it would always turn into, oh, well, you can join us on our Indigenous night, or we'll feature you on the Indigenous hour on Sundays, you know, that sort of thing. And it was always trying to stick me in the Indigenous box. And I'm like, yes, I'm Indigenous, but I sing country music. I know my culture, I know my traditions, my family is spiritual, and I come from a long line of healers on my grandmothers on my mom's side. But I'm choosing to sing mainstream. At that time, I was choosing to sing mainstream country music. And so that was something that I had to, I had to learn how to, you know, get over that hump. And for me, I couldn't do that in Ontario. I couldn't do that in Canada, period. And so that's why I ended up moving to Nashville. And even though I did face some racism and discrimination in Nashville, at least nobody was trying to stick me in an Indigenous box. You know, it was, yes, people sometimes said no because, you know, oh, we can't have Native Americans within country music. Doesn't really make sense. Some people would say things like that. But at least they didn't say that, you know, we have to stick you in the Indigenous box. And so for me, I felt like I had some hope there. And that's why I stuck it out in Nashville. And to be honest, I don't know if I ever would have made it if I didn't make the move to Nashville. If I stayed in Canada, I don't know if I would have ever got my shot as a mainstream artist in Canada.
Right. Well, I can say that, I can say for sure that you were, you know, thankfully you hung in there. And ladies and gentlemen, after the panel here, we're going to have a concert put on by Crystal and her lovely partner. And that's coming up approximately 10 to 15 minutes. But we do have thank you very much, Crystal, for that, you know, just a glimpse of, I'm sure, you know, it's a lifetime worth of, you know, there's such, you know, everybody speaking, it's instantly identifiable as an Indigenous person. And it's really refreshing just to hear everybody's perspective. So we do have a couple of questions. I'll take the first one to you, Les. Question one is, how are these histories / knowledge of the reserve versus non-reserved land shared with younger peoples? I think you're muted still, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really have a problem with the terminology that we're using out there in mainstream because it's misleading. First of all, reserve, you know, that's a colonial term. We would call it unceded territory. It's never been given to anyone else. We've always had it. So therefore, you know, to us, it's territory. It's our original land base. But there's this term called reserve, or land set aside, or lands reserved for Indians. And that's a colonial term that comes out of the Indian Act. So how does this knowledge get shared? Well, it should be shared in Native Studies classrooms all over Canada. And it should be at the detail that the local community wants it to be, which means then that more has to be done in the London region, within school boards and within community groups to get to the local stories, similar to what Lodan shared with us, to that detail, and, you know, to the third stopping place that the Anishinaabe stopped, which is your territory, Bkejwanong, and in this region. While Wiyetnang Treaty Council is the 5 First Nations that make up the Anishinaabe here in this southwestern Ontario region. And that's a significant confederacy, or, you know, collection of communities that have a shared history here. But our kids won't learn that if they wait for the provincial curriculum to tell them. So it's really important for us as communities to pick up that work, do it amongst each other, and start to develop those resources so our own people can tell those stories, like my children and my grandchildren.
That's absolutely true. And I've been saying that for years because of my involvement with the culture and the presentations that we make to educational institutions, as well as any professional institutions that ask us to be a part of, you know, culture presentations, that, you know, a lot of their knowledge comes from, you know, this very basic and remedial, you know, they'll study the Plains people or the Innu people as a whole, but this curriculum, especially for our area, needs to be, you know, contributed to by individuals such as yourselves. We're the ones that have to write it, us and other people like us, who have to know exactly what our kids need to hear inside of an educational setting. So I think you're really hitting the nail on the head there. Lodan, next question for you. My great-grandfather used to travel to Walpole often to talk to the First Nations, but that knowledge of language has been lost. Are there places to learn the languages and stories?
I think each community, you know, has different language programs existing, you know, at different levels, whether it's, you know, for children or if it's for adult learners. You know, it's important to identify, you know, within your own community, you know, depending, I'm not sure where the person's coming from that's asking the question.
Yeah.
But like in our community, we have a language and a resource center here in Oneida, and they run or they offer a lot of different resources that you can learn from home. You know, we have different language apps and things like that you can download from the App Store now. You know, if you have Apple products, and I think they work for Android as well. Some of them. I think Oneida, Wisconsin has an app. Our language center here has a lot of online resources, and I think Oneida, New York, as well. That they have some online resources as well to help people get started, and you know, that's you know, a good start for people that are wanting to get involved with language.
Absolutely, and I know for many Canadians, they have, you know, Indigenous, you know, somewhere down their bloodline, and it's not always an easy thing for you know, a Canadian person to say, hey, I have this, I don't know this person's circumstances that asked the question, but it is relevant to many non-native people in North America. And you know, just through my travels, people will come up and just ask these random questions. It's actually kind of heartbreaking. Like to us, our identity is everything. It's everything as Native people, as Indigenous people. And I can't imagine, you know, somebody who is, you know, born and they live the majority of their life not knowing, like, what am I? Like, what is this thing inside of me that's calling me? And I think that language is you know, the first step in addition to the education component that we're talking about. Jen Rose, have
Even for
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, even for like people that are living in an urban setting, because I did spend some time living in London, and that's kind of like when I met you. You know, when I was younger, you know, my teenager years, you know, I was living in London, and so for people living in urban centers, you know, if there's a friendship center there or anything like that,
yeah,
within your town or your city, you know, check them out as well, because they might have some resources there as well, you know, in terms of learning language.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good first step. And I know many Canadians are, you know, they don't know how to go about it. And it must be not an easy thing, like I said earlier. So Jenna Rose, just got another question. I'll take it to you. How have social media platforms such as TikTok influenced the interest of younger generations to reclaim their culture and traditions?
So I'm not like super active on TikTok, but I definitely have some friends in London that are all over it. And I do have to say that, like, Crystal was talking about this type of humor. And I think Indigenous people have like a very particular type of humor. Like, I'm very suspicious of people that don't laugh, that are like overly serious, because even in these calls and stuff, I'm like always kind of goofing off. Like, Leslie knows we'll have meetings and I'm just da, 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 da. And you know, there's a type of humor, and you know, Gord, our mom has always said that humor is one of the things that has allowed our people to survive.
Mhm.
You know, like we survive by humor, because mom would be like, you could cry about things to the end of time, but you know, we have to find humor in it. I do think Indigenous people have this type of humor where you can meet another person, like Crystal, I've never met you, but we could have each other laughing like hysterically, like within minutes, because we share that same similar, you know, slightly self-deprecating, kind of always making fun of our own communities, slightly dark, and you know, inappropriate humor. And so TikTok, yeah, and so TikTok has seen this resurgence of like, holy geez, Indigenous niche people are so funny. Like just this like getting out there and making videos about like anti-culture and like powwow culture. And I think it's just been amazing social media, because, you know, you can put it out there, but like the way that it works and algorithms and hashtags and everything, if you only want to watch like half an hour of anti-jokes, you can find that, you know? And so I think that TikTok has definitely become a really big tool for that Indigenous humor to really come through and therefore connect. And I don't know about you, like I always thought that my family was kind of an anomaly in our humor, because we are always laughing, but it's a very common thing across the board for Indigenous families to like sit down, have pie, tea, laugh, play some sort of board game, which is what we do a lot.
Yeah.
Or some sort of whatever you decide, Gord.
Around our family dinner tables, it's actually called the Circle of Fear.
Yeah. don't mess up on a word or anything. We're gonna jump on you. You know, you accidentally slip up, we are right there. We are vicious.
Yes, everybody has their own story, and then every time we get together, everybody's gonna bring up that same story.
Remember when, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that social media has really allowed for this sort of bonding of like, wait, we all have this same sort of humor. We all have this like culture of like getting through it and surviving. And I just think at the end of the day, Indigenous people are like the most hilarious people ever.
All right.
I'm really funny. So, you know,
I can attest to that. Yeah. But what Generose is alluding to is like this kind of way that we can barely contain it most times. Like it's a really hard thing for us to not laugh. It's a hard thing for us to not.
That's so true, to make
cackling.
Yes, even when it's like inappropriate. Like I sit on a board for Nike N7, and so we have our meetings at the Nike building in Oregon. And so the meeting consists of Indigenous people, but also all different colored people, other people who contribute to N7. And so every once in a while, somebody will make a joke and then everybody will join in. Next thing you know, we're joking for like 10 minutes straight. And then, you know, somebody has to step in and say, okay, guys, we got to get back to the meeting.
Yeah, it's worth, you know, sacrificing.
It's funny to come to these panels and be really serious, because as soon as we're done, we're all like, ah!
Yeah. Crystal, we have another question. I'll take it to you. What do you think about making necessary Native education and public education like South Dakota just started?
I think that's so important. That's something that I've been talking about for a while. I share it a lot on my Facebook. I truly believe that knowledge is power. And I feel like there would be a lot less, there would be more understanding if people just knew. Like, that's something that was mentioned earlier. It's like sometimes I get tired of educating people about, things that, it's out there. If you just Google it, you'll learn the history of our people. And sometimes people don't realize exactly how things went down when the settlers came in and when we were, our culture was taken away, and just the history of things. I think if people, sometimes when I do inform people of how it all happened, sometimes they're like, oh, I had no idea. And like, when I did my first radio tour in America, we visit over, I think it was like 300 radio stations. And I talked about residential schools a lot. And there was like almost every single person who I talked about it to, like at the radio stations, people on my team at the record label, they had no idea. They had no idea of the history of the residential school era. So, I think from everything from who was the original tribes to the area that you're living in, to residential schools, to everything like that, all that education is important. I think if people knew more, they'd be more empathetic and they'd be more understanding. And then I think that would build a lot of bridges between Indigenous people and all different kinds of different races. So yeah, I definitely think it's important.
That's a great answer. Yeah, that's true. I've had 4 kids in total go through the education system, and I think that a lot of non-native kids are focusing on quite a bit of other stuff as opposed to, something that wouldn't be as exciting and fun to learn as the history of the Indigenous people, but so important in our understanding of bridging. I don't know, it's necessary, but it's not like it was ever new to anybody. I was born urban and I was raised urban, and just like you were saying about how you were the only Native person in the, we're just kind of waiting for everybody else to clue in and to get it. So Lodan, how can food operations like hospitals honor food sovereignty, food as medicine, and Indigenous foodways?
Can you say that again?
How can food operations like hospitals, let's say, honor food sovereignty and food as medicine and Indigenous foodways?
How can the hospital?
Like it's for example, it's how can food operations like just an institution that handles food, like a hospital, let's say, honor food sovereignty?
Can I tap into this for a second?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just, Gord, I remember when being out in Saskatchewan one time, and I was driving around with one of our aunties, and I've told this story before, but she was telling me, our Auntie Viola, that when she was little, she remembered that every family had their own garden. They lived off of the land. And she's like, everyone, had their own, they knew the earth, they knew the land, and they grew their food from it. And she said that she remembered the face of the man that brought alcohol to the reserve. And she said after that, like, he brought the alcohol to get votes for something, like something political. And she said after that, she just remembers that it didn't happen anymore. And so the families became dependent on processed foods and other stuff. And when I think about food sovereignty, I think about enabling ways that families and youth can get back into that earth and get back into growing that and being more sustainable. And perhaps through a hospital, like having some of your food brought in from that.
Yeah, community. like wild meat or berries or something like that being brought into the hospital. Enabling the community to get back to that in whatever ways that is, like funding gardens, having some food come from those local communities, anything that gets them back into being connected to that. Because I remember hearing that and I'd never heard that before. And it just like blew my mind. She was like, I can still see his face in my mind. Yeah. And she's like, we shared collectively our food. Yeah. And I think like anything that can get that back and get people back to it. That was just her perspective on her introduction to flour and to, and she's like, everyone just stuff. Became, yeah. Thank you, Generous. Les, do you know any legitimate websites? Sorry, go ahead, Lodan. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, in talking about food sovereignty, that there's a really big movement right now in a lot of our communities, as far as, building seed banks, of heirloom seeds. Like we have a lot of Iroquoian seed varieties, our history tells us that when we moved to this area, when we migrated to this area, because originally our people lived near the Mississippi, and all along that area, they said that we lived near Nebraska. And that area is like prime agricultural area around there. Even the Nebraska football team, you know, like their mascot is the Cornhuskers. And so corn culture for our people has been something that has been around for our people, you know, for, you know, since time immemorial. And when we migrated up to what we now know to be our homelands in New York State and as well into Ontario, you know, which we acknowledge today is our beaver hunting grounds, you know, that we share with the Anishinaabe people. Food sovereignty and looking at food as medicine. A lot of that was like, you know, in terms of eating according to the cycle of the year, you know, the cycles that we go through throughout the year. And they say that we have 13 new moons throughout the year. And that was kind of like our calendar. And each new moon that we go through, that there's a different food that kind of comes into season. You know, so a lot of people will, you know, just focus on the hunting seasons, but there is our maple sugar season, there is our fishing season, our foraging season. And all of those things were a part of our health and well-being.
Absolutely.
Was our food sovereignty and how we connected and related to the earth. So if we look at the things that our people are dealing with now, like cancer and diabetes and things like that, it's because of all the processed foods that we're eating. And genetically, like our DNA was never meant for us to be eating a lot of processed foods. And that's where a lot of the sicknesses that we experience now today in our communities, that's where a lot of that comes from, is overconsumption of processed foods. So that's what we need to get back to, is we need to get back to food sovereignty and incorporating more of that into our diets.
All right, thank you, Jenna Rose and Lodun, for that elaboration on that one. I think one thing we should understand too is growing our own food and getting back to the way we were, that is not an easy thing to do. That's a hard thing to do. And I think as right when our babies are little, we need to instill that, well, we have to set aside this work and this time to accomplish this, because before contact, you know, a large part of our time was dedicated to, you know, consumption, to eating, to living. So we just have a few minutes left here. Les, I'm going to take the last question to you. Is there any legitimate websites for non-natives to learn about the history of the first peoples in this region that you can think of?
Geez, you know what? The history, I wouldn't say I have one that I can readily direct them to be honest. Mm-hmm. On this particular region, CMO, Chippewa, Munsee, Oneida, no, it's really going to take some work and some partnerships, I think, to help give us some support and resources to get those types of detailed information out there. They're all there. They're all in land claim settlement research documents and all the work. You know, it's all there. It's all very thick in terms of academic, but we need some help getting that out there and in responsible ways, I'll say. Yeah,
I think that's the part. That's part of our people's delivery too. Is a lot of what we learn, a lot of what we teach each other is in, you know, forums just like this. It's person to person. It's this oral history, this oral teaching is what we will opt for over, you know, written word or spoken word. So a lot of this information has to be passed on through. Which brings me to, somebody made a good point. They said, can you speak more to the fact that London area children are not really being taught about the surrounding territories, like more so about the plains or the northern areas? And I would say, Crystal, when you're talking about, again, being the only native in the room, I should imagine that's the way it is in most academic circles where, you know, if anybody was to show up there and say, no, you have to teach it like this, you would have a room full of people looking at you like you have, you know, something crawling out of your ears. But you have to have somebody that really stands up and say, no, when you're writing educational curriculum, it has to say this and it has to say that. I don't know if that's necessarily a battle so much as it is a good thing, a positive thing. For why wouldn't we want to learn that? Why wouldn't we want to teach our kids that? And by our kids, I mean, you know, Canadian kids too. Why not learn about the history of CMO or Moravian Town or Kettle Point or Saugeen or Six Nations or New Credit? I mean, there is a First Nation within an hour radius in all directions of London. Is so much history, but you won't find any of that in the educational systems, like very, very little. And I think we do, all of us here have, well, with the exception of Crystal, all of us here have contacts in the school boards and in the post-secondary institutions where, you know, they bring us in and we do these presentations and we talk, but there has to be something more, you know.
They're trying. And I mean, I think that, you know, we have, if there's anybody with youth in London who wants their children to know more, I think a big thing is advocate for those, as parents, you know,
as parents.
The Thames Valley School Board has the most amazing resource in Star McGahey and Charlene Camillo, who are doing work, who are the Indigenous liaisons. They're the ones leading the curriculum, and they are like, you know, nose to the grindstone, working to have students within the Thames Valley School Board be educated about the communities that are here. Like, you know, nothing against, you know, West Coast Indigenous communities, but that doesn't affect my day to day. Like, the students need to be learning about the communities that are right there. And I think that parents need to advocate for that. Just as I think that the Thames Valley School Board needs to be advocating for its students that are within its catchment that don't have potable water. You know, it shouldn't just be the Indigenous parents, you know.
Right.
It's important for your children to have, you want your children to be worldly, well, let them start right here and advocate that these children learn. If you want to know, reach out to Star and Charlene.
Yeah, you should type their names in the group chat just so people can be familiar with that.
They have so many resources about, you know, cultural appropriation and everything. Like, they are a wealth of knowledge for our children, and I think they're doing an amazing job.
Absolutely. Sorry to cut you off. We are officially out of time, you guys. And I want to say a big hi, a big miigwech to all of our panelists, Jenna Rose Sands, Leslie Henry White-Eye, Mr. Lodon Hanyas, and of course, Crystal Shawanda. We are now going to take it to our video concert featuring Crystal and her husband, so we hope everybody enjoys that. We didn't have enough time. Like I say, this is something we could talk about for weeks and months, but thank you to all of our viewers, and we'll see you down the road somewhere at a good powwow.
Go.
Thank you so much to all the amazing panelists for sharing their lived experiences with us and their beautiful insights. And thank you to the audience for engaging with them and submitting their questions. Up next, we have Crystal Shawanda, a very special performance by her. She's actually a Juno-nominated blues singer right now, and we're so excited that she's able to share with us a really great performance. Again, independent artist, so if you'd like to support her, please go to sunfest.on.ca, give us your kind donations, and we can continue to support artists such as Crystal. So, without any further ado, Crystal Shawanda.
Hey everyone, welcome to TD Sunfest. I'm Crystal Shawanda, and we're so happy to be joining you all today. Let's have some fun.
Where the big church
church mama was singing a song right to me. She sang, Lordy, 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 the bartender's last call. Yes, she sang, Lordy, 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 the bartender's last call. There ain't no difference in that church house and roadhouse after all. There's temptation in the battle, redemption in the Bible. No matter what song you sing, whether you're dancing on the tables or dancing in the aisles, they see what Monday morning brings. You're playing at the roadhouse, we had 'em dancing all night. They were passing around the tip jar like Sunday morning tide. It's like Sunday morning service only served on Saturday night. There's temptation in the bottle, redemption in the Bible. Don't matter what song you sing, whether you're dancing on the tables or dancing in the aisles, they see what Monday morning brings. I went down to the church house to get my Sunday morning right. I went down to the church house to get my Sunday morning right. I caught 'em dancing in the aisles like the roadhouse we played last night. Yeah, they were dancing in the aisles like the roadhouse we played last night. Yeah, so that was the title track of my most recent album, Church House Blues. We're going to do another song from my latest album, Church House Blues. This song is called Hey Love, and this is something that me and Dwayne Strobel wrote with David Norris. And for those of you that don't know, this is Dwayne Strobel over here on the guitar. He's my amazing guitar player, my lovely husband, and my wonderful baby daddy. So he wears a lot of different hats, Mr. Dwayne Strobel. But this song we're going to do for you, this is a song that was, it's actually a conversation with love itself, and it's all about giving love another chance. This is called Hey Love. Hey love, I've been missing you. It's been rough, this lonely heart's been blue. But hey, listen, I know I've been distant, and I'm sorry, I thought we were through. Hey love, things are coming back around. But straight up, I've been only down and out. You're patiently waiting, anticipating for the right one to come around. I'm glad you're home, helping me move on through the sunshine that you bring. You're a long lost friend, we'll run from you again. Hey love, it's a beautiful thing. Hey love, is it too much to ask? I've got a crush, could you have my back? My heart is racing, my knees are shaking, and the butterflies remind me of what we had. I'm glad you're home, helping me move on through the sunshine that you bring. You're a long lost friend, we'll run from you again. Hey love, it's a beautiful thing. all through the sunshine that you bring. You're a long lost friend, won't run from you again. In love, it's a beautiful thing. Some new music for you all. And we just want to thank you all so much for joining us and watching the show. We truly appreciate the opportunity for us to continue to play music for people. This past year has been really, really difficult for artists. So we encourage all of you, if you have it to spare, to donate to support artists at the arts by visiting sunfest.on.ca. And we thank you all so much for that. This next song we're going to do for you is one of my favorite songs in the whole wide world. It was on my last album, my Voodoo Woman album, and it's a cover from one of my favorite singers, Etta James. And this was a song that I grew up listening to. My brother used to listen to a lot of older blues music, and although I started my path in country music, Etta James was one of those voices that led me to the blues. So this is I'd Rather Go Blind. When the reflection in the glass that I held to my lips, and baby, reveal the tears that are falling down my face. And baby, oh, I'd rather go blind, boy, than to see you walk away. And, ooh, yeah. Go on and walk away. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. See you go. I don't want to see you go. No, I'd rather be blind. No, 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 little edit James for you all. We hope you're all doing great out there, and we hope you're all taking care and being safe. And we can't wait for the day when we can all be on a stage and have you all out in the audience and feel your beautiful energy. We miss it so very much. So we can't wait for that day. And until then, we're going to keep hanging out here at TV Sunfest. So thanks again for joining us. This next song we're going to do for you is another song from the Voodoo Woman album. And this was another cover from the great and legendary Big Mama Thornton. Here's a little hound dog for you all. Wag your tail, but I ain't gonna feed you no more. You told me you was high class, oh, but I could see through there. You told me you was high class, oh, but I could see through there. Oh, and honey, I know I ain't no real cool kid. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Oh, you've been snooping on my door. I ain't nothing but a hound dog. Oh, you've been snooping at my door. Oh, you could wag your tail, but I ain't gonna feed you no more. Hey! Blue, oh, you made me weep and moan. You made me feel so blue, oh, you made me weep and moan. 'Cause I'm looking for a man, and all you're looking for is a home. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Oh, you've been snooping at my door. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Oh, you've been snooping at my door. Oh, you can wag your tail, but I ain't gonna feed you no more. Wow! You can ride your town, but I ain't gonna feed you no more. Ow, ow, ow. Get on your hound dog. Yeah, there's a little hound dog for y'all. That was a lot of fun. Haven't done that one in a while, so I had a good time on that one. Hope you guys had a good time too. We want to thank, we want to send a very special thank you out to TD Sunfest for continuing to support the arts and bringing us all together and hanging out today for the show. Thank you so much, TD Sunfest. You guys are the best. So this next song we're going to do for you, we're going to take you back to my introduction into the blues. This was the title track of my very first blues album. And this was a song that me and Dwayne wrote together one day after watching the news. We were kind of just sitting there and just overwhelmed by all these headlines. And unfortunately, as the years have gone by, this song just seems to stay relevant. So this is called The Whole World's Got the Blues. This world's gone crazy, at least that's what the headlines say. I don't know, it just seems like lately it's only bad news every day. They said a change is gonna come, but I don't think they meant for the worst. But when you look around, what's going down, take the whole world's caught up in some kind of voodoo curse. And I just wanna cry and fall on my knees. And I just wanna cry, 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 cry and beg Lord, please. Cry for revolution, cry for a solution. Cry 'cause I know what it's like to lose. I just wanna cry with the people 'cause the whole world's got the blues. It's like we've lost our faith. It's like we've lost our innocence. You ever wonder why things don't change when we're living without consequence? And Mother Earth feels it too. Well, she ain't been treated kind. The way the earth's been quaking up's her heart breaking, and all our leaders have lost their minds. Oh, I just wanna cry and fall on my knees. Yeah, I just wanna cry, 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 cry and beg Lord, please. Cry for revolution, cry for a solution. Cry 'cause I know what it's like to lose. And I just wanna cry with the people 'cause the whole world's got the blues. Aye, I just wanna cry gather blue. So anyways, it looks like we got time for one more song. Wow, time flies when you are having an awesome time, a good old time, as I always say. Before we do this last song, we want to send a very special thank you out once again to TD Sunfest. Thank you so much for continuing to support the arts and making this possible and bringing us all together in this way. We really do appreciate it. We're so happy to be a part of this event today. And also, like I said earlier, if you have it to give, we encourage you all to please donate to support artists at the arts by visiting sunfest.on.ca. Like I said, this past year has been very difficult for artists, so anything that you can contribute or donate is truly, truly appreciated. And thank you so much, especially for joining us today and watching the show. Thank you so much, Gordon, Alfredo, for making this possible and for inviting us to be a part of it. We really do appreciate it. The last song of the show that we're going to close up with is from my latest album, Church House Blues. This album has been very good to us. We released it just as the pandemic was declared, and we were so worried and kind of freaking out. Like, what do we do? But thankfully, the album stayed on the charts, and we were even nominated for 2 Juno Awards for Blues Album of the Year, as well as for Indigenous Artist of the Year. And so we're just so grateful and thankful for that. So this song we're gonna close up with is from the Church House Blues album, and this is a cover of the very iconic Canadian band, the Tragically Hip. I've always said that the Tragically Hip is the soundtrack to my misspent youth. So this is kind of my ode to that. And and this song really puts through the point. Some people were surprised that I put this on my album because it's not a blues song, but it is a blues song. You just gotta wiggle it around a little bit. So we're gonna do New Orleans is Sinking for you all, but we're gonna do it our way. So you all take care out there. Thank you so much for joining us. Here's a little New Orleans is Sinking. Pepper blues on the street, loose and complete on the skies, all smoky blue green. I can't forsake a Dixie bed shake, so we danced the sidewalk clean. My memory is muddy, what's this river that I'm in? New Orleans is sinking, man, and I don't wanna swim. Hey! Colonel Tom, what's wrong? What's going on? Can't tie yourself up for a deal. He said, hey, north, you south, shut your big mouth. You gotta do what you feel is real. Ain't got no picture postcards, ain't got no souvenirs. My baby, she don't know me when I'm thinking about those years. Hey! There lies a light bulb hanging on a wire, sucking up to someone just to stoke the fire. Hanging out the highlights of the scenery, I saw a little cloud that looked a little like me. I got my hands in the river, my feet back up on the banks. I looked up to the Lord above and said, hey man, thanks. Sometimes Sometimes I feel so good I gotta scream. She said, go to baby, I know exactly what you mean. She said, I swear to God, she said, oh, is muddy, what's the sprinkle that I'm in? New Orleans is shaking, man, and I don't wanna swim. Ha! Woo! Thank you so much, TD Sunfest. Thank you all for watching. My name is Crystal Shawanda. This is D-Wayne Strobo, and we've had an awesome time hanging out with you guys. Take care. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Wasn't that fantastic? I really hope that you enjoyed the music by Crystal Shawanda. Thank you so much for sharing your music with us. I'd also like to thank once again the panelists from our discussion for sharing their experiences with us, the Eagle Flight Singers for their circle dance demonstration, and of course, Gordon Nicotine-Sands for helping us put that all together. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Again, thank you to the sponsors as well, our sponsors and granting agencies, especially TD Bank, the Government of Ontario, as well as the Department of Canadian Heritage. And thank you to you, the audience, for sharing with us, for asking questions, for engaging, and of course, enjoying the performance. Without you, we wouldn't be doing this work. Again, my name is Mercedes Kasha on behalf of the Sunfest Committee. Have a great night.